Hey guys, so as you may remember, a couple of weeks ago I travelled up to London to see Heathers the Musical in the Other Palace. Now, as I've seen the show 3 times so far, I thought I'd try to give you a little review on it. Now, the fact that I have seen the show 3 times, and I do actually have plans to go back and see it again in a couple of weeks, I think suggests that I really do enjoy the show. But I thought I'd try and use this video to explain just why I like it so much. Now, I don't really know how to do a review video, so bear with me, I'm going to try my best. So I guess we should start with a little background on the show. Now, Heathers the Musical is based on the 1988 cult classic, Heathers, which starred a young Christian Slater and Winona Ryder. The books, the lyrics and the music for the show were written by the creative team of Kevin Murphy and Larry O'Keefe back in 2010. It then had a short limited time run of performances in LA before getting moved to off-Broadway in 2014. Then in 2017 it was brought over to the UK, where it was workshopped in the Other Palace. Now, the Other Palace is where it's been based this summer, from June 9th to August 4th. Both the US and UK version of the show were directed by Andy Frickman, and the UK version of the show has been produced by Paul Taylor Mills and Bill Kenwright. Now, like I said, the show only ran until August 4th in the Other Palace, so it has now ended. However, it is officially set to move to the West End, where it'll be based for 12 weeks starting September 3rd in the Theatre Royal Haymarket. Now, for anyone who hasn't seen the original movie or is not familiar with the storyline to this show, I'll try to give you a brief summary and try not to give any spoilers. However, I can't promise there are not going to be spoilers later on in this video or in subsequent videos. So the show is based in Westonburg High School in Sherwood, Ohio in 1989. It centres around the character of Veronica Sawyer in her senior year. Now, at the start of the school year, Veronica gets in with the 3 most popular girls in school, the Heathers. It's Heather Chandler, Heather Duke and Heather Mcnamara. Now, also during the course of the show, she meets and ends up in a relationship with the character Jason Dean, or JD as he's referred to. Now, JD has very twisted views on the world, and during the course of the show he does convince Veronica to share these views, and this has fatal consequences for 3 other characters within the show. Now, this show contains everything you would expect to find in high school: bullying, cliques, parties, peer pressure and murder. Now, next I had planned to talk about the cast of this show. However, when I sat down to write out what I wanted to say for this video, I very quickly realised there was no way I could talk about the amazing cast of Heathers without making this video extremely long. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you my top 5 for now. I will, however, put the full cast list down in the description. I'm then going to make a separate video where I will go into more detail about the cast. So let's go through my top 5, and these are in no particular order. So first up we have Heather Chandler, who's played by Jodie Steele. Now, Jodie is able to portray the ultimate mean girl and make it look effortless. She also brings a very comedic side to the character throughout the show, which I loved. Next up we have another Heather, Heather Mcnamara, who's played by Sophie Isaccs. Now, Sophie brings a vulnerability to Heather Mcnamara that I really enjoyed and really pulls on the heartstrings, especially during the solo song of Lifeboat. Once again, she also brings a somewhat comedic side to the character, which had me watching her for a good part of the show. Next up we have the character of Miss Fleming, who's played by Rebecca Locke. Now, Miss Fleming probably has one of the best songs in the show and definitely the funniest. And I found Rebecca's ability to improvise during this song, Shine a Light, impressive, especially considering she was able to keep a straight face and stay in character when the audience responded. Next we have the only male in this list, who is JD, played by Jamie Muscato. Now, in my other video I will go into more detail as to why I think Jamie is an excellent JD, but for now let's just say the level of crazy he brings to JD is bordering on terrifying. And last up we have the main character of Veronica Sawyer, who's played by Carrie Fletcher. Now, anybody who can do 8 shows a week and barely ever leave the stage deserves applause, especially if they can make it look as effortless as Carrie did. Her vocals never seem to waver throughout the run, her comedic timing remained spot on, and the vulnerability and emotion she was able to bring to Veronica just added to the character, and is one of the reasons I think she makes an excellent Veronica. Finally, we come to the technical aspects of the show. Now, I'm going to split this into lights, sound, set, staging and costumes, but we'll start with the set. Now obviously the set I'm going to talk about is that of the other palace, however this may remain the same, but it could also change when it moves to the Haymarket in September. Now during the course of the show we see the characters in varying locations. We see them on a bridge, in a school, in a cemetery, at a church, in a field, a 7-Eleven and around 4 houses. Now obviously the other palace is a reasonably small theatre and therefore a small stage. This means that they can't have huge set pieces. It also means, because they want to keep the show runtime rather short, they can't have huge set changes either. This means they have to get very creative with how they differentiate between the different locations. Now the basic set is that of the school, which you can see here. How they differentiate this between the different locations is with the use of the moving set pieces. Now the moving set pieces are not just single set pieces, they are utilised so they double and sometimes triple in their uses. What stays in the school can be turned around to be cabinets in one of the houses. What are lockers at the school can be opened up to be the fencing in the back of Veronica's house. What is the balcony within the school also is utilised as a bridge in one scene and the inside of Veronica's closet. Ultimately the creative team have done an amazing job at utilising every set piece to its full potential, and I couldn't help but find myself fascinated how they did this. Next up I'm going to talk about the sound. Now obviously I could talk about the songs within the show, however, like with the cast, I feel that I could be here forever doing that, so once again I'm going to put that in another separate video which I will post later today or later this week. I could also talk about the amazing all-female band they had to bring the music to life. Now within most theatre shows you will see the band in an orchestra pit in front of the stage. Now because of the layout of the other palace, where the band was actually built into the set. They were put into 4x4 rooms which were on the upper part of the set, and this doesn't get revealed till obviously during the bows. But I think all the women involved did an amazing job and are extremely talented too. I will however like to mention the sound crew for this production. Now I have a feeling this is a similar case for most musical theatre crews, but the level of organisation they need to keep a show running is mind-blowing. There are 16 cast members, at least in the other Palace version. I believe there are more when it moves to the Haymarket, all of whom are mic'd up throughout the duration of the show. The majority of the cast, when not on stage, are in the wings providing backing vocals. That means the sound crew, have to be incredibly organised as to know whose mic has to be on and when, otherwise you will be hearing what the cast are saying backstage. I think not just obviously this sound crew, but all sound crews deserve a lot more recognition for the huge part they play when it comes to keeping the show running. Now next up we have the lighting in the show. Now this can be quite often a critical but overlooked part of a show. Like I've already mentioned, because of the size of the theatre and the runtime of the show, they couldn't have huge set changes. So that means lighting was used to help differentiate between the locations as well as the moving set pieces. One example of this would be during Martha's solo song in the second act. Now, for anyone who's not familiar, this song is based on top of a bridge. Now, obviously, like I've mentioned, they use the balcony for the school to be the bridge, and they then use lighting to give the effect of water under the bridge, therefore helping differentiate the locations. Another crucial part the lighting played is to help differentiate between different themes within the show. By this I mean there are two aspects to the show. There's an aspect that is real, i.e. what's actually happening, and aspects that are simply in the characters' heads, which these are referred to as the nightmare scenes. Now one way they help to differentiate and the audience be able to tell between the two is through lighting. Whatever is really happening in the show is lit as you would expect, and then anything that is more of a nightmare scene has more of a darker, blacklight kind of theme to it. This not only helps differentiate the two parts, but also makes the nightmare scenes all the more creepier. Next up we have the staging of the show. By this I mean the blocking, i.e. how the show is performed. Now obviously I could talk about the dance numbers within the show. Now there are very well choreographed dance numbers throughout the show, and they all appear to different degrees. Three of the biggest would be Shine a Light, Candy Store and Big Fun. Now obviously, because there are a lot of cast members on stage during these scenes, and it is a reasonably small stage, it does have to be very well planned out and choreographed, which it is, and it comes across amazingly. However, what I want to focus on more is the staging of the fight scenes. Now, during the course of the show, there are three main fight scenes. One in the first act, which takes place between JD, Kurt and Ram. Another one towards the end of the second act, towards the end of the first act, also between JD, Kurt and Ram. And then one towards the end of the show in the second act, which is between JD and Veronica. Now, all three of these fight scenes have to be very well planned out and choreographed, mainly to make sure nobody gets injured. Now, the first fight scene between JD, Kurt and Ram is in slow motion. Now, because this fight scene is also happening during the course of a song, it means this has to be very well coordinated to cue up with the song. So this choreography is more to do with the timing of the fight opposed to actually making sure nobody gets injured. However, I suspect that is also the case. Now, the second fight scene also happens in Act 1 and is also between JD, Kurt and Ram. Now, this one is at full speed and is very brief and quick. Now, this one does have to be coordinated, mainly to make sure no real contact happens between the cast. Otherwise, Jamie would be getting kicked every night. Now, the final fight scene happens towards the end of the second act and therefore towards the end of the show. It takes place between Veronica and JD as they fight over a gun. It also involves the use of a croquet mallet. Now, this fight in particular has to be very well planned out and choreographed, otherwise Carrie or Jamie would end up with one serious headache. Now, the testament to how well they've rehearsed this is the fact that you truly do believe Veronica is going to take JD's head off with that mallet. Now, even though I've seen the show a few times prior, I still found myself holding my breath during this scene because of how well executed and how believable it really is. The final technical aspect of the show, and the one I love the most, is the costumes. Now, the characters in this show have very iconic looks. You'll find the three Heathers and Veronica in their signature colour blazers. Heather Chandler will be in red, Heather Duke will be in green, Heather Mcnamara in yellow, and Veronica in blue. JD will often be all in black and wearing a trench coat. Martha is often in pink and wearing a unicorn-themed sweater. And the two jocks, Kurt and Ram, will be in their varsity jackets. Now, the fact that the characters do have such iconic looks just adds to the show in the fact that audience members can come dressed up as their favourite characters. Now, in some cases, audience members have gone full out, even to the smallest detail, like the striped cuffs on Veronica's blazer. In other cases, fans choose to just give a subtle nod to their favourite character by wearing the corresponding colour. Of the shows I went to see, there were a lot of people in Veronica blue and Chandler red. Now, in regards to the costume in the show, there are two I was most impressed with. That was that of Heather Duke and of Veronica. Now, a little spoiler, during the course of the show, Heather Duke has a costume change that happens on stage. The way in which this is done is by one costume being ripped away and the other costume revealed underneath. Now, the wardrobe department have done an extremely amazing job at constructing this costume, to the fact not only does this quick change happen effortlessly and smoothly every night, you also cannot tell that the costume has been designed to be ripped away. In regards to Veronica's costume, there were three aspects that I liked. One was practical in regards to the show, another practical in regards to the character herself, and the third I think was just a nice little touch. Now, I'm going to start with that one. Now, like I've already mentioned, Veronica's cuffs are striped in this version of the show, but if you're familiar with the US version, you know those cuffs were spotted. So this is just simply a nice little touch to try and differentiate between the two versions. It's also a subtle nod to the fact that they are in fact two different versions of the same show. Now, the aspect of the costume that is practical in the context of the show is that of Veronica's blouse. Now, during the course of the show, Veronica has a scene where her blouse is ripped open by JD during Dead Girl Walking. Now, obviously, it would be very expensive to constantly having to buy new blouses or stitch on the buttons all the time. This means that the blouse has been designed so it can rip open easily with the use of poppers. It also means that the blouse can quickly be done up in the subsequent scene. Now, this is a very small detail and obviously practical, where it is ideal for the show. Now, the last aspect of the costume that I loved was that of the blazer itself. Now, from what I could tell, there was a small pocket on the inside of Veronica's blazer. Now, if you're familiar with the character, Veronica is very well known within the school for her forgery abilities. That means she's quite often have paper and pen to hand for when she needs it. So the fact that there is a small pocket on the side of the blazer is very practical for her, and it's something I think Veronica would appreciate. It's not just been done for the sake of doing it. Now, there's probably a lot more I could say about this show, however I feel this video has probably gone on long enough for now, especially considering I have 2 more parts yet to film. So I'm just going to leave you with my brief thoughts on the show. Like I said, and as evident by this video, I really love this show. I'm more than willing to go back and see it over and over again. I've already seen it 3 times, and I have plans to see it quite a few more times before the new end runs on November 24th. Now, I find this show funny and dark, dramatic yet light-hearted, powerful yet vulnerable. It's a very well balanced show. There's also characters within the show that everybody can relate to, be it Martha, Veronica, or one of the Heathers. However, if you do relate to JD, you might want to go talk to somebody. Now, I highly recommend trying to get tickets for the show. I know there are quite a lot left for the new run, and I think everybody should try and see it once. The messages within the show are extremely important, not only to the majority of the teenagers that are in the audience of the shows, but to anybody that's ever been through some of the things that take place in this show. So like I said, go try and get a ticket. You won't regret it. And if you do see the show and don't agree with my opinion that it's a good show, that's fine. Not everybody is going to like everything, but just don't be a heather about how you go about your review.